What are the fastest electric cars in the world? Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you. I found the fastest electric car from every major manufacturer, and I've ranked them according to their top speed from the lowest to the highest. Some cars share the same top speed, so I've also ordered them according to how quickly they can accelerate from 0 to 60 miles an hour. Whichever car accelerates the quickest gets a higher place on the list. So, what are the fastest electric cars in the world? Let's find out. Buy, sell,
car. Wow.
The first car on my list is the Dacia Spring. This hatchback will only manage 78 miles an hour, but that's plenty for a small electric city car, but it's still slow enough that Dacia doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. The Smart EQ42 and Seat Me electric cars share the next spot on my list because they'll both hit 81 miles an hour. The Seat takes 12.3 seconds to do 0 to 60, but the Smart can do it in 11.6 seconds, so it just sneaks ahead. Next up is the Mazda MX-30. This crossover SUV looks pretty cool and even has rear hinged back doors like an RX. It's not very fast. It takes 9.7 seconds to do 0 to 60 miles an hour and tops out at 87 miles an hour. The Honda E is one of the cutest electric cars you can buy, so you probably won't care that it takes 8.3 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles an hour and that its top speed is just 90 miles an hour. 6 cars from Citroën, Fiat, DS, Peugeot, Vauxhall and Mini share the next spot on this list. They all max out at 93 miles an hour. The EC4X is the fastest electric Citroën, but it's the slowest accelerating car in this bunch. It does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 9.5 seconds. The Fiat 500 electric with a 42 kilowatt-hour battery will also hit 93 miles an hour and it'll do 0 to 60 in 9 seconds flat. The DS3 E-Tense has the same top speed and it will hit 60 miles an hour in 8.7 seconds. Peugeot's fastest electric car is the E208. Once again, its top speed is 93 miles an hour, but it'll accelerate from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 8.1 seconds. The Vauxhall, or Opel depending on where you live, Corsa E shares lots of parts with its Peugeot, so it isn't a surprise that both these cars have the same 93 mile an hour top speed. However, the Corsa E will do 0 to 60 miles an hour half a second quicker than the E208. It does it in 7.6 seconds. Anyhow, the quickest accelerating car in this bunch is the Mini Electric. It has the same 93 mile an hour top speed as the others, but it hits 60 miles an hour from rest in 7.3 seconds. Next up is the Renault Megane E-Tech with a 99 mile an hour top speed. That's the same as the Cupra Born with the optional 58 kilowatt hour battery, but the Cupra goes ahead on this list because it's quicker from 0 to 60 miles an hour. The Renault takes 7.5 seconds, but the Cupra manages it in just 6.6 seconds. The fastest electric cars from Toyota, Lexus and Subaru all have a 100 mile an hour top speed. The Lexus UX300E is the slowest accelerating car of the three. It takes 7.5 seconds to do 0 to 60 miles an hour. Dual motor versions of the Toyota BZ4X and the Subaru Solterra take 6.9 seconds to do 0 to 60 miles an hour, so they share the same spot on this list. Next is the new Hummer EV. The most powerful versions have a ridiculous 1000 horsepower, but they top out at just 106 miles an hour. GMC says the Hummer EV will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in around 3 seconds though, so it should reach its 106 mile an hour top speed very, very quickly. The Volkswagen ID.4 GTX and Skoda Enyaq VRS will both do 112 miles an hour. They're basically the same car underneath, but the ID.4 accelerates a little bit quicker. It does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 6.2 seconds, while the Skoda takes 6.5 seconds. The Volvo C40 Recharge also has a 112 mile an hour top speed, thanks to Volvo's new brand-wide speed limiter. You can only do 112 mile an hour regardless of which Volvo you buy. However, the C40 gets a high place on this list because it has the quickest 0 to 60 time of any electric Volvo. It'll do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4.7 seconds, which is 1.5 seconds quicker than the Volkswagen and 1.8 seconds quicker than the Skoda. There is a car with a 112 mile an hour top speed that's even quicker at accelerating than the Volvo, and it's the BYD Han. This is a dual motor electric version from China that has 517 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. Can't afford a Porsche Taycan Sport Turismo? Well, the only other electric estate car you can buy at the moment is the MG5 EV. Not sure people are cross-shopping those, but hey, the MG is a practical electric family car and it tops out 115 miles an hour. It also takes 8.3 seconds to do 0 to 60 miles an hour. The 305 horsepower dual motor Hyundai Ioniq 5 also has a top speed of 115 miles an hour. It does 0 to 60 though in 5.2 seconds. That's not all. There will be an even quicker version of the Ioniq 5 soon because Hyundai are releasing an N version. Sorry to interrupt the video, but I need to tell you about the carwow September sale. We've got over 800 amazing deals with an average saving of £1,500. So click on the pop-out banner up there, or the link in the description below to go to carwow to check out the sale. But move quickly because the offers end on the 30th of September. The next car on this list is the Nissan Ariya with the 87 kWh battery. This brand new SUV will hit 124 miles an hour and does 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. Just edging ahead of that is a luxury SUV from Chinese brand Hongqi. The EHS9 is Hongqi's first ever electric car, and I reckon it looks like a Rolls-Royce Cullinan from a parallel universe. Anyhow, it has dual motors producing 552 horsepower, and it will max out at 124 miles an hour. It'll also do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4.9 seconds, which is slightly quicker than the Nissan. Next is the Jaguar I-Pace. That'll also manage 124 miles an hour, but it accelerates from 0 to 60 miles an hour in an even sportier 4.5 seconds. But that's not all. The Xpeng G9 will also max out at 124 miles an hour, but this 550 horsepower Chinese SUV does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3.9 seconds. Now we come to the fifth and final car on this list with a 124 mile an hour top speed, and it's the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. It's the quickest of the bunch, as its 0 to 60 time is 3.7 seconds. This is the VinFast VF8. Now, you've probably never heard of it, but it's a Vietnamese electric SUV with 402 horsepower from 2 electric motors. It does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5.3 seconds and has a top speed that is quoted as being more than 124 miles an hour. That's all they say. While Volvo now limits the top speed of its cars to 112 miles an hour, sister company Polestar doesn't. A top specification Polestar 2 long range with dual motors will do the 0 to 60 mile an hour sprint in 4.5 seconds and keep on going until it hits 127 miles an hour. There's a 19 mile an hour jump to the next car on this list, and it's the Genesis GV60. This looks like a fairly normal crossover SUV, but under that body are 2 electric motors that produce 490 horsepower. This means it'll do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 4 seconds flat and hit 146 miles an hour. The German Big Three share the next spot on my list. The fastest EVs from BMW, Mercedes and Audi all max out to a limited 155 mile an hour top speed. Such is the way of the Germans. The BMW iX-M60 does 0 to 60 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds, while the Mercedes-AMG EQS 53 will do that same sprint in 3.4 seconds. The quickest of the three though is the Audi RS e-tron GT, which will do 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. But there's one American EV that's even quicker than these cars, and it's the Faraday Future FF91. Now, Faraday doesn't quote an official top speed for this car, but it did test it at 155 miles an hour, hence its place on this list, though it also timed it at 0 to 60 miles an hour in an amazing 2.4 seconds, and that's why it's ahead of the Germans. You'd never believe that a Kia will be as fast as a Porsche Turbo S. But it's true. The Kia EV6 GT has a 162 mile an hour top speed, which is exactly the same as the range-topping Porsche Taycan Turbo S. The Porsche accelerates much quicker than the Kia though. It rockets from 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.8 seconds, compared to the Kia's still respectable 3.5 second time. There's a big jump to the next car on the list, and it's the NIO EP9. This Chinese electric car is a bit rare. There's only a handful that will be built, and they each cost £2.5 million. What that gets you is a rare EV that can do 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds and tops out at 194 miles an hour. Now we're into proper supercar territory. And the next car, a perfect example, is a 2,000 horsepower Lotus Evija hypercar. It'll do 0 to 60 miles an hour in less than 3 seconds and has a top speed that's quoted as being more than 200 miles an hour. Amazingly, that's no faster than the Lucid Air Sapphire, which is a pretty normal looking 4-door saloon. Despite being a practical family car, the Sapphire is a serious bit of kit with 3 electric motors that produce a combined 1,200 horsepower. Lucid also quotes that this car will do more than 200 miles an hour, just like Lotus do. But the Air Sapphire will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds. This means it goes ahead of the Lotus on this list. Pininfarina has designed loads of iconic cars over the years, from the Ferrari 250 GT to the Peugeot 205 hatchback, but now it's making its own car called the Battista, and it's a very different beast. For starters, it has 1,900 horsepower from 4 electric motors. This means it accelerates from 0 to 60 miles an hour in under 2 seconds and has a top speed of 217 miles an hour. Now we come to the top 3 fastest electric cars. In third place is the Aspark Owl. It has a weird name, but it's a serious electric hypercar with 4 electric motors that make over 2,000 horsepower and 2,000 newton meters of torque. As a result, it'll do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 1.72 seconds and hit a top speed of 249 miles an hour. That's the quickest 0 to 60 time of any car on this list. But we're talking about top speed, remember, and the Deuce Veyan just sneaks ahead of the Owl into second place on the list. You see, while this 2,000 2,200 horsepower hypercar is a little bit slower to 60 than the Owl, with a quoted time of under 2 seconds, Dees claims it has a slightly higher top speed of, and I quote, over 249 miles an hour. So a smidge faster than the Owl then. But the Dees can't rest on its laurels, because just around the corner is the new Tesla Roadster. Yeah, I know Elon's been promising this car for years, but it has to arrive eventually, right? Anyway, it's supposed to do 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds and have a top speed of more than 250 miles an hour. Will anyone actually get the cars they've ordered? Only time will tell. But just in case the new Roadster never arrives, I'll tell you about the next fastest Tesla, which is the Model S Plaid. This high-tech saloon can do 0 to 60 miles an hour in less than 2 seconds, and Tesla says it'll hit 200 miles an hour. And taking those numbers into account, the Tesla would fit between the Lotus Evija and the Lucid Air Sapphire on this list. Now we come to the fastest electric car in the world, and it is the Rimac Nevera. This Croatian hypercar has one electric motor for each wheel that work together to give it 1,914 horsepower and 2,360 newton meters of torque. It can do 0 to 60 miles an hour in 1.85 seconds, which feels absolutely bonkers. Here's a clip of me racing a Rimac Nevera against a Ferrari SF90. That Rimac is certainly impressive, and what's even more impressive is that it's the fastest electric car ever made, with a top speed of 258 miles an hour. Amazing. Anyhow, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like, let me know some other videos you'd like to see, and click on those windows there to watch some more videos. And if you click on that box there, you can go to CarWow and we will help you sell your car. Just upload some photos, give a brief description, and our dealers will bid on your car to make sure you get a great price for it. Thanks for watching.